My parents gave my college fund to my gifted brother. 10 years later, when they needed help with medical bills, I sent them his number. He never finished college and was living in their old basement. Hey everyone, before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. So this all started when I was scrolling through Facebook a few weeks ago. Someone I went to high school with posted about their kid graduating college debt-free. They were gushing about how they'd set up a college fund when their kid was a toddler and stuck with it no matter what. It was one of those humble brag posts, you know the kind. But it stopped me cold because it hit a nerve I thought I'd buried years ago. You see, I was supposed to have a college fund too. My parents made a big deal about it when I was growing up. Every birthday, every Christmas, my mom would smile and say, "We're putting this toward your future, Jaden. One day you'll thank us." And as a kid, I believed her. I didn't even ask for expensive gifts or complain when we didn't go on vacations like my friends' families did. It's for college, they'd say, and I bought into it completely. But here's the thing. When the time came for me to actually go to college, that fund, gone. I remember the exact day I found out. I was 17, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of college brochures. My mom, Audrey, came in with a cup of tea, and I casually asked if we could sit down soon to figure out which schools we could afford with my fund. She froze for half a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she gave me this tight smile and said, "We'll talk about it later." Later turned out to be the next day, when my parents sat me down in the living room. My dad, Isaac, cleared his throat and said, "Jaden, we need to talk about your college plans." The tone was serious, which instantly set me on edge. That's when they told me the college fund was gone. At first I thought they meant something awful had happened, like they'd been scammed or hit with some unexpected medical bills. But no, they had spent it on my younger brother, Gabriel. Gabriel, the gifted one, the golden child. The one who got all the attention growing up because he was so smart and full of potential. When I was struggling to get B's in algebra, Gabriel was winning math competitions. When I was busting my ass in after-school jobs to save up for college, Gabriel was off at robotics camps and private tutoring sessions, fully funded by our parents. Apparently, those camps and tutors weren't cheap, and my parents, in their infinite wisdom, decided that Gabriel's education was a better investment. My mom even said that phrase, a better investment, like I was some outdated stock they'd written off. I was furious. But more than that, I was hurt. I trusted them. They'd made me believe they had my back, that I wouldn't have to fight so hard to get ahead. And now they were telling me to apply for scholarships and take out loans because Gabriel needed that money more. The worst part? Gabriel didn't even seem to feel bad about it. He was 16 at the time, and when I confronted him, he just shrugged and said, "Not my fault you're not as good at school." I can still feel the way my stomach dropped when he said that. It wasn't just arrogance, it was entitlement. He genuinely believed he deserved it more than I did. I ended up putting myself through college with a combination of scholarships, loans, and part-time jobs. I worked at the campus library, waited tables on weekends, and spent summers doing construction with my uncle. It wasn't easy, but I made it work. Meanwhile, Gabriel breezed through high school and started at a fancy private college, fully funded by what should have been my college fund. For years, I swallowed my anger and focused on my own life. I didn't have the energy to stay mad. But every now and then, I'd hear updates about Gabriel from my parents, how he was switching majors again, how he needed more money for this or that program, how he was struggling to find his path. And every time, it stung. I tried to keep my distance from my family after that. I still called on birthdays and sent cards on holidays, but the closeness we'd had when I was a kid was gone. I poured everything into my career, determined to build something for myself, by myself. But here's the kicker. Just when I thought I'd moved on, they pulled me back in. Last month, out of the blue, my mom called me. She sounded off, nervous, maybe even a little ashamed. She said she and my dad needed to talk to me about something important, something about family. And that's where things really started to unravel. Update, it was a Thursday evening when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from my mom. That wasn't unusual in itself. We'd kept up a minimal level of contact over the years. A birthday call here, a holiday card there. But when I saw her name on my screen, I hesitated. Something about it felt off. When I answered, her voice was shaky, like she was trying too hard to sound cheerful, but couldn't quite pull it off. "Hi, Jaden," she started, pausing just long enough to make me feel uneasy. "It's been a while. How are you?" Small talk wasn't her style. My mom was the kind of person who cut straight to the point, so her sudden interest in my life felt strange. After a couple of polite but awkward exchanges, she dropped the act. "We need to talk," she said. "It's important." Important. That word hung in the air like a bad smell. I leaned against the kitchen counter, bracing myself. "Okay," I said. "What's going on?" There was another pause, longer this time, before she finally admitted, "Your father and I are having some financial troubles. We were hoping you might be able to help." I can't say I was surprised. I'd always suspected that my parents weren't great with money. Growing up, They'd stretched themselves thin, trying to give Gabriel every possible advantage. But I never thought much about where the money was coming from. Hearing her say it out loud, though, was something else entirely. Help how? I asked carefully. Well, she started, her voice faltering. Your dad's medical bills have been piling up, and we're falling behind on the mortgage. We just need a little help to get back on track. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. My parents had made it abundantly clear years ago where their priorities lay. And now, after a decade of silence on anything that wasn't superficial, they were coming to me for a bailout. You talked to Gabriel? I asked, the words coming out sharper than I intended. There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. We have, but he's not in a position to help right now. That caught my attention. What do you mean? Another long pause. He's been living with us, she admitted reluctantly. For a while now, things didn't exactly go as planned for him after college. I didn't press her for details then, but the picture was starting to come together. Gabriel, their golden child, the one who got everything handed to him on a silver platter, was back under their roof, living in the same basement where we used to play video games as kids. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. So let me get this straight, I said. You gave him my college fund, paid for his expensive education, and now he's living with you, broke, and you're asking me for money? Her response was immediate. Jaden, this isn't about that. This is about family. We're in trouble, and we need your help. It was like she didn't even hear me. Like the years of struggle I'd gone through to make something of myself didn't matter. Like Gabriel's failures were just bad luck, while my success was somehow guaranteed all along. I'll think about it, I said eventually, just to get her off the phone that night. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the conversation, digging up memories I hadn't thought about in years. The fights, the favoritism, the endless excuses for Gabriel's behavior. And now they wanted me to swoop in and save the day. The next morning, I decided to call Gabriel. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I needed to hear his side of the story. When he answered, his tone was defensive from the start, like he was expecting a fight. What do you want, Jaden? He asked. Mom said you're living with them, I said. She also said they're in trouble and you can't help. What's going on? He sighed heavily, like this conversation was a huge inconvenience. Yeah, I'm here. Things didn't work out after college, okay? I'm figuring it out. Figuring it out, I repeated. It's been years, Gabriel. What have you been doing? Why do you care? He shot back. You've always looked down on me anyway. I bit back the urge to yell. This isn't about me. It's about Mom. Mom and Dad, they're drowning in bills, and they're asking me for help because you can't step up. His response was immediate and angry. Oh, so now you're the perfect son? Mr. Self-Made? Give me a break. You wouldn't be where you are if they hadn't paid for your food and a roof over your head when we were kids. That hit a nerve. I had to take a deep breath before responding. They sacrificed for you, Gabriel. They gave you everything I didn't get, and you still managed to screw it up. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, he said, I don't need a lecture from you. Maybe not, I said, but you need to figure your life out because I'm not cleaning up your messes. I hung up before he could respond. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to help my parents, even after everything they'd done. But another part of me, the bigger part, knew this wasn't my responsibility. In the end, I called my mom back. I'm sorry, I told her. I can't help you. If you need support, you should talk to Gabriel. He's the one you invested in. She sounded shocked, maybe even hurt. Jaden, please. I have my own life to take care of, I said firmly. I worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not going to put myself at risk because Gabriel didn't live up to your expectations. I gave her Gabriel's number just in case she didn't already have it and hung up. It felt cold, even harsh, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing up for myself. Still, I couldn't help wondering what would happen next. Final update. A week after I told my mom I wouldn't help them, I got a text from my dad. It wasn't long, just we need to talk. No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at the message for a while, debating whether to respond before deciding to ignore it. Whatever they needed to say could wait. A few days later, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize. The subject line was cryptic. Regarding your family, I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short, blunt message. Hi, Jaden. You don't know me, but I'm Gabriel's landlord. He left your email as an emergency contact. He hasn't paid rent in 3 months, and I can't get in touch with him. I thought you should know. Mark. I couldn't believe it. Gabriel had apparently moved out of my parents' house without telling them or me and was now dragging my name into his mess. My first instinct was to call my mom and demand answers, but I stopped myself. No, this wasn't my problem. I'd made that clear. But then something happened that forced me to get involved. A week later, I came home to a certified letter sitting in my mailbox. It was from a collections agency. Gabriel, it seemed, had used my name and my credit as a co-signer for something. I had no idea what, but the letter said I was on the hook for $122,000. I saw red. My hands were shaking as I read the letter, my mind racing. How could he have done this? How could my own brother stoop so low? I took a day to calm down and gather evidence before making my move. I called the collections agency and explained the situation, letting them know I'd never co-signed anything for Gabriel. They advised me to file a police report for fraud, which I did the next morning. But I wasn't done. I decided it was time for Gabriel to face the consequences of his actions. I hired a private investigator, a small splurge I considered well worth the price, and asked them to dig into Gabriel's financial history. What they uncovered shocked even me. Not only had Gabriel been using my name to co-sign loans, but he'd also opened a credit card in my name. The card had been maxed out months ago, and he'd been making minimum payments just to keep it from going to collections, until recently. Armed with this information, I filed a second police report and started the process of disputing the fraudulent accounts. I made it clear to the investigator that I wanted a record of everything. If Gabriel was going to burn bridges, I'd make sure there was no way for him to weasel out of the mess he'd created. Meanwhile, my parents were still calling and texting, begging me to be the bigger person and help Gabriel get back on his feet. My mom even had the audacity to say, "Family forgives, Jaden. You don't want to ruin your relationship over something like this." I laughed out loud when I read that. Relationship? What relationship? They'd burned that bridge years ago when they chose Gabriel's potential over my future. But the final blow came a few weeks later. Gabriel must have realized I was taking legal action because he called me out of the blue. His voice was desperate, a far cry from the arrogant tone I remembered. "Jaden," he said, "I messed up, okay? I just need a little help to fix this. Please, man, you can't just throw me to the wolves." I let him talk for a while, his excuses piling up like garbage on a sidewalk. Then, when he finally stopped to breathe, I said, "You're right, Gabriel. I can't throw you to the wolves." He sighed in relief. "Thank you, because you threw yourself to the wolves a long time ago," I interrupted, "and now you can deal with the fallout." I hung up before he could respond. That was the last time I spoke to Gabriel. In the end, he had to deal with the fraud charges on his own. He tried calling my parents for help, but they were tapped out, financially and emotionally. He ended up declaring bankruptcy, and last I heard, he was couch surfing at a friend's place. As for my parents, they stopped asking me for help after that. I think they finally realized I wasn't their safety net anymore. Do I feel guilty? A little, if I'm being honest. But mostly, I feel free. Free from the weight of their expectations, their guilt trips, and their blatant favoritism. I've built a life for myself that they had no part in, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control. Sometimes I think about the version of my life where my parents hadn't gambled everything on Gabriel. Would things have been easier? Probably. But I also wouldn't be the person I am today, someone who knows his worth and won't let anyone take advantage of him again. So yeah, maybe this story didn't end with a perfect reconciliation or some tearful family reunion, but honestly, I think that's okay. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting go.